Next up, we are here to talk about the virus and bacterial origins of diabetes. Now, with all of these names listed here, I'm not going to go one by one and talk about these. These are just certain viruses that have been shown to increase autoimmune reactions and the development of autoimmune conditions, right? So enterovirus, rotavirus, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, which is extremely popular right now, paracovirus, influenza, just a typical flu, parvovirus, mumps, rubella, human endogenous retrovirus, okay? So enterovirus tends to be the most prevalent in diabetics, particularly type 1 diabetics. So you can see here in this paper, they found that there was an association between the development of diabetes and enterovirus infection, and that the connection was strong, with almost 10 times the odds of having an enterovirus infection for those diagnosed with type 1. So if you have type 1 diabetes, the chances of you having an enterovirus in your body is 10 times greater than if you did not have type 1 diabetes. And there are a lot of different ways in which that could possibly lead to the development of diabetes. So you can see here, up here at the top, number one, direct infection. So this is the virus coming into the body and directly affecting the beta cells. They are going to the pancreas, to the beta cells, infecting the cells and taking them over, right? Thereby disarming their ability to create insulin, causing an immune response. And there's that. Then there is the bystander activation. So the virus invades, it creates this inflammatory response, which inadvertently targets beta cells, right? And this could be through some sort of mimicry, like the virus itself looks similar to beta cells, so that when the virus causes antibodies to be created, they not only target the virus, but they also target the beta cells. And this leads to the development of the disease, which is mentioned down here in number 4, too, molecular mimicry, in that the viral proteins look like beta cells and cause for everything to get killed off. There's also dysregulation of mitochondrial RNA. So again, all having to do with kind of a ROS and inflammatory response. The virus invades the pancreas, causes a pro-inflammatory response, which alters the DNA in the mitochondria of the beta cells, causing there to be an alteration of energy, right? So it basically kind of hits the kill switch on the engine of the beta cells, and the beta cells end up dying. And then the chronic aspect of it, number 5 over here, the persistent infection, the fact that the virus persists, whether dormant or active, always eliciting some sort of inflammatory response, which eventually just degrades the bodily system as a whole, leading to beta cell die-off. And another aspect of the virus-diabetes connection, which I had never known about until I started researching for this episode, is that the seasonality of being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes is something I had never known. The colder months have higher rates of type 1 diabetes diagnoses. Did you know about that? I didn't know about that. So, turns out they started paying attention in the 1920s. They found that in those times of seasonal change, you have those seasonal flus in there. We mentioned before that influenza has a role, has a tie to the development of autoimmune conditions. But it's been confirmed that there are peaks in diagnoses of type 1 diabetes that correlate with seasonal changes. So when you look at the diabetes viral connection, there are things you have to consider, right? So this is from the paper we just talked about, the seasonality of diabetes. So whilst viral infection alone may not be sufficient to induce type 1 diabetes in any individual, a number of factors such as timing, the site, viral load, strain, and type of infection in combination with host genetics and the pancreatic microenvironment has been highlighted as critical for disease pathogenesis. So that's to say that the authors of this particular paper are saying maybe it's not just the virus itself, it's the virus being the straw that broke the camel's back amongst a sea of other straws, things like the timing, right, in time with the seasons, the change of the seasons, the type of infection. It could be any of the ones we mentioned before, with mimicking beta cells, messing with mitochondrial DNA, are beta cells being an innocent bystander to the immune response designated for the virus? You know, who knows? There's a lot going on. So another thing to ask is, correlation does not imply causation, right? So they're saying that people with type 1 diabetes are 10 times more likely to have an enterovirus. Does that mean that the enterovirus means that you have diabetes, or does getting diabetes make you more susceptible to the enterovirus? That we don't know. So ongoing research on the structural and pathological mechanisms for the ties between viruses and diabetes. They talk about the downstream effect on a particular pathway called the JAK-STAT pathway, which has to do with an immune response that causes DNA damage, DNA oxidation. Coincidentally, it's affecting the HLA genes, which we mentioned before are those labeled the diabetes genes. Direct beta cell infection, are they actually attacking the beta cells, or are they mimicking things similar to the beta cells, and the beta cells are just kind of inadvertently being killed off, right? And I mentioned this before, chicken or the egg. Is the virus causing the immune system to react, or is our immune system changed beforehand, allowing for these viruses to take hold? We have yet to know.